joining us for the part two of the project belonging from there to here. It actually, the entire project runs for more than 6 months, no? So it's been a treat to have a two-part program. And some of you might have seen the first part, which focused on the works of Spanish artist Enrique Marty, who was here last August. And this time, the exhibition focuses on the couple, artist couple, Alfredo, or Sir Alfred daw kanina. May nag-refer sa'yo.
They call me
Parang,
Ax.
parang knighted, no? And Isabel Aquilizan. So to start the conversation, which marks the formal opening, let me introduce our guest curator for this project, Kristine Guzmán, who's an independent curator based in Valladolid, Spain, and film commissioner at the Castilla y León Film Commission. From 2003 to 2009 and 2011 to 2022, she held the post of general coordinator at MUSAC, or the Museo de Arte Contemporáneo de Castilla y León, where she curated several exhibitions of the three featured artists, Enrique, Isabel, and Alfredo. She was also the director of the exhibition and editorial series Post-Pandemic Cities. Kristine is a graduate of architecture from the University of Santo Tomas, with a master's degree in restoration architecture from the Universidad Politécnica de Madrid. She is currently completing a degree in art history at the Universidad Nacional de Educación y Distancia. So, Kristine, first, thank you for working with us on these two projects, and it's been well received, and we are excited to see how our guests today will respond to the Aquilizan installation. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Boots. Thank you so much for this opportunity to show this double exhibition, for allowing us to experiment on this new format in a two-part exhibition. Thank you so much to the whole team of Ateneo, from the interns to the volunteers, to the maintenance staff, the coordination staff, press, everyone. You've been so professional since the start of the planning of this exhibition. I think it's been a year or so, yeah, in planning. So thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And of course, thank you to the Aquilizans for this opportunity to work with you again. It's really an honor for me. Perhaps you would like to greet our audience first before we start the conversation proper.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat, because we have some very good friends of family around us today. Good afternoon to all. And it's been a very productive, inspiring, and fun week for us, aside that the preparation is like what Kristine said, it's been a year for us too, but of course, until the very end, we have to touch and still work. But, it's been really a great experience with working with the staff of Ateneo. Boots, thank you for your time, patience, and support. And everyone.
Well, I've always been an avid follower of Isabel and Alfredo, but I must confess that I did not know their work until I went to Spain, because it was when I got in touch with the contemporary art world. And their work connects with me and connects with many people in many different ways. And that's why I felt attracted to their work, because I was in Spain, I was a migrant, I was feeling everything that they were expressing in their works. So I really felt connected to them from the start. I spent with them almost a month in Leon when we did an exhibition back in 2022, and I remember having many many conversations with them about art and life, but I think for the purposes of this talk, I would like to concentrate on at least four concepts. It is the way I understand their work, the way that it has connected with me, which is the idea of belonging, the idea of displacement, of home, and of community. So we have several images of past works. Actually, most of them touch on all of these concepts, but we'll try to talk in detail about this. But first, I would like to make a recap of the exhibition of the part one and part two, because as we said before, this is actually a group exhibition divided into two parts. So the first part was dedicated to Enrique Marty, a Spanish artist who was here last August. And the idea of the exhibition, the idea of the whole exhibition is to speak about family, about relationships, about seeing the foreign in the familiar, and the familiar in the foreign, through different objects, through different lived experiences. And it speaks about the idea of belonging, most of all, about fitting in, about feeling part of a community, of a family, and a society. And Enrique's project, I think the word that describes best his exhibition is the term that he mentioned in this talk, which was the unheimlich. It's a German term that was coined by Sigmund Freud, which refers to the idea of the uncanny, or something strange or sinister in the domestic environment. For the Aquilizans, the contrast, that's why this is a dialogue, but it's contrasting because there are two different approaches. For them, I think we can say that it's the opposite of the unheimlich is the heimlich, which refers to the domestic, the familiar, the intimate, or the private. But it also has a second meaning, which is something concealed. And I think that they illustrated it very well in this exhibition. But I think the term that best describes their work, more than Heimlich, because they never really use this term, the word that describes their work is belonging. Belonging has many different layers. For us, it means to be, an existential phase in their lives. It means longing or to yearn for something. And it also means to belong, like I said, to fit in and to be part of something. So maybe we can start with this work project belonging was actually, they used it back in the 1990s, in the late 1990s. And may I ask Isabel and Alfredo, how did this work project belonging come about?
Yeah, I think we can actually talk about the work here, which is a project we did with the Asia Pacific Triennial in 1999, which is the third Asia Pacific Triennial. And we borrowed objects of things that the Filipino migrant community brought along with them when they migrated to Australia. So it talks about the idea of memory, it talks about the idea of home, family, and so on and so forth. And on the floor, we also use the salt as a material to signify something else. Of course, we have different ways of looking at it, but of course, we talk about the idea of dislocation also. No, and I guess this also means that our work is all about materials and how it relates to an idea. And by weaving them all together, you create some kind of a narrative or some kind of a concept, I suppose.
And not to mention, Alfredo, we also incorporated the sound. We collected the stories of the migrant communities who contributed with their objects in this exhibition, and they talked about the story of how they remember Philippines or family or a situation that that they would always be fond of talking about. And that's part of that installation, and also a scent that we used, that I have used, in the duration of the exhibition, I did a performance, like going around, transferring the scent of Sampaguita in the space, within the space, and around the gallery.
So even before you became migrants yourselves, you were already conscious about the topic of migration.
Well, Filipinos are, well, we live like in a country where we have thousands of islands, and I think there's always this need to to um, um, to go somewhere else, no? Like what's happening on the other side of the island. So we and of course we're also like a country of migrants wherever you go, like Cook Cooktown to Lithuania to
Always find the Filipino.
yeah, you always find a Filipino, and you always connect and ask them to ask adobo for you, to cook
To cook
adobo for you.
adobo.
I survived my studies in UK, with having lunch with the Filipino community during Sunday. So I have to make sure that I go to mass every Sunday. So yeah, I guess these are and the stories I think that comes along with it, and I think that's very important.
Yes, in this work, which is a very early work, the dream boat, it already signifies that idea of journey, the idea of going away, but at the same time, it's also a crib. At what phase in your life did you do
This
this work?
was done during when I was doing my master's degree in UK, and it was actually made out of the bed where I've been sleeping for the past two or more years, and it was jailed with wood where the Englishman used to fence their ship in. And then we also use the salt, like a dried sea. So, I mean, it's a simple, like three elements that you put together in the form of a jailed boat that signifies some kind, well, a certain narrative, in which I'm separated with my family when I was doing my master's.
You mentioned that you left to do your master's, you were separated from your family, and I remember that you described to me this work which you did while Isabel was.
The original is all in white. So you can talk-
Well, at the time when I was doing my studies, Isabel was also pregnant during the time, and I also live in an area where all these secondhand shops. So I started every time I go to my studio. I buy this white baby sweater every day and pin it in my studio every day. So I have this collection of white baby sweater that we still keep, and that's the original work, and creating this flower form, um, and I guess it becomes some kind of for me to be able to go through also, no, the longing of family, and and also one of the main material I think that I use for during that period is I use wool, because I don't have air conditioning in my studio, so I just keep buying these woolen blankets, woolen sweaters, and fill up the whole gallery with this material, and started working with those material. And of course, it talks about the idea of course, location and place and topography and so on and so forth.
Yeah. When we speak about belonging, it's the three layers of meanings that I said before, but it's also something practical. We talk about belongings, about personal belongings, and I think that is the basic material of all your works, practically all of your works, and we see this here also in one of your earliest works for Alliance Francaise in Manila, Presences and Absences. Can you describe this work for us?
After, well, my absence for like how many years, I came back, and I think there's also a need to reconnect. No, so instead of Isabel and I talks about what's happened, during those period. I just I just emptied our house and put everything inside the gallery, one object at a time. And at the same time, Isabel also installed all the photographs, like hundreds and hundreds of photographs that I took
During your absence.
during my absence. And that space in between the wall and the floor, wherein there's some kind of a conversations that transpired during those period of absence. And yeah, the title of the work is Presences and Absences. So I think it's self.
You left the Philippines for Australia in 2006, and you took with you the balikbayan boxes that we saw in the first part of the exhibition. It was also called Project Belonging. That is a very iconic work because from one cubed balikbayan box, you created several different iterations of that work, and one of them is this address, right? But it's a different story, and I remember this story. Was very beautiful, very dramatic when you mentioned it to me. Maybe you would like to share it with the public.
Hello. I think before this project, in 2006, we were invited by the Sydney Biennale to take part in do a project with them. So it so happened that we were already planning to move overseas, which is to migrate. So it was a perfect timing that we can do a project. So the project was to ship all our belongings that we can bring along with us and giving each one of the family their own balikbayan boxes or the home returning boxes to choose the things that you can bring along with you. So we packed our stuff, put it in a box, and the Sydney Biennale shipped everything for us, all belongings. And that's the work that we showed. We removed the content of the box like a leche flan or a jello, and that became the work for the Biennale. This is already a work that we. Yeah, but simultaneously, thank you, Alfredo, for reminding me, that there was an ongoing exhibition during the time that we are showing with this, in Sydney Biennale, the works that we left behind at the Cultural Center of the Philippines. And also another work that we donated to the Museum of the Filipino People, the National Museum, of our studio that we packed and a content of our studio in a pallet. So that's all simultaneously ongoing. But this work is already like a work we did for the Adelaide Biennale. And this is actually for Singapore Biennale. And yeah, that was in Adelaide. But we came up with this work because we were given, when we arrived in Australia, we were given objects and things of family and friends that they thought that will help us to start a new life in Australia. But there's so much. Like we ended up having like 3 toasters, how many fridges, how many, computers, and we have to, what we're going to do with them. So we ended up, this is composed of 145 balikbayan box. And we filled it up with the objects that was given to us. And of course, in a form of a sort of a roofless house. And you can enter the space and you can see the content of this room,
So,
of those objects.
Your artworks are it goes together with certain situations in your life. It's sort of like a performance. When you left, you took the balikbayan boxes, you displayed the boxes in Sydney, you displayed the things that were left behind in the Philippines, and you also displayed your empty studio, the contents of your empty studio in another exhibition. And then this is a work where in your first few years of Australia, when you were still trying to settle down, and many people showed their support for you by donating all these materials. But then we see in all your works everyday items. You're like the slippers or the blankets or the toothbrushes. All of these are everyday items. Can you uh, comment to us the idea of using everyday items for your installations? Because all of them have their particular story. Perhaps we start with the wings or the toothbrushes.
Well, I think most of our projects are well autobiographical in some ways, but it's also site specific most of the time. Like in this case, like we got invited to do a project in Bicol, like about 6 hours drive from Manila, and we end up in this like barrio which is called Barangay Uno, and one of the main industry of that barrio is drying fish or the daing, no, wherein they dry the fish, put salt, and there's this like kilometers of bamboo beds along the shoreline. But the tragedy is the flow of water of the whole Camarines Norte and up in this little barrio. And every day they get all this rubbish or basura. No? And yeah, and one of the projects that we thought of doing is just cleaning up. But of course, the following day, here comes another basura. In fact, if there's someone who will drown, they just go to this little barrio, and that person end up in this barrio. So as you imagine, you know how much basura. So we just started. Why don't we just collect the sleepers? And of course, when you use sleepers, there's a lot of well stories that you can connect, and you know, it talks about journeys, talks about, but also you also have all these um, unpaired. So yeah, so we thought of creating an installation of sleepers perched on bamboo poles, and creating that form of a school of fish going back to the sea. But I think most of our projects are not all about those things, but it's also about engaging with community. So we started working with this community, and I think that's the most important thing with all the works that we create. You know, in the end, we come up with installations or objects or things. But I think what's important is that when you share things with the community, which is what art is all about anyway. But I think we start learning from each other. Like yeah, they learn. We start talking about what are you doing? You know, this is contemporary art, or you know. But talking to a fisherman, you have to start also learning how to engage and how to share. You know, in their language. But at the same time, you also start learning how to drink gin, you know, with them, which is the best part. And I think those exchanges, and I think those things are the most important thing, you know, in art making.
Okay, let's talk about displacement or migration. You left the Philippines and you stayed in Australia, but you've been living like you've had residencies all over the world, and you would spend many months away from home, from your second home, doing residencies and installing. And you've used means of transportation in many of your artworks. So we have the jeepney, we have the sleighs, or these trucks, or the boat, which is very significant in all your works. So how do all these works connect to the local context, because I know that all of these have their particular meanings, their specificity in terms of the site.
Yeah, this is. Oh, I need a whole session to talk about this work, but it's a very one of the most probably difficult projects that we did, and it is in Moscow because, well, for one, culturally. Second is there's a lot of layers that comes with it. Like we did this installation just beside the Kremlin, and the day before the opening, we changed we we changed the configuration that the configuration and the orientation of the installation. Everything is facing Kremlin because of the experience that we had during those period of the installation, which is okay.
They made us suffer.
So we started creating this weird sort of a Russian tanks that the day before the opening we
Directed it to the Star of Kremlin.
it was directed towards the Star of Kremlin. Of course, small little gestures, a small little, that you when the audience engage and start reading between the lines, I think there's things that you can actually impart. But at the same time, it just mainly talks about migration and the war and what's going on in that part of the globe at the moment.
Yeah, but at the same time doing that, we talk about how we respond, how we engage. First, in the site, with the people that we work with. With this project, we arrived with nothing. We asked, of course, should have been collected. We build on site, on the spot from zero, but there was nothing. And then there was so much challenges that was brought to us, including that with our assistant and abuse that was happening around us. So we just, that will automatically affect the work that we're doing until the very end, that we don't have any assistants except the both of us who are working because of really just, it was a really challenging experience. But anyway, this is the response to that project. So
Yeah.
how I wish we can show you the video that Alfredo took during the time that we had to look for materials so we can build the installation.
I think there's another image of two cars that probably illustrate the process and the way we create things. This is actually done during like a Winter Olympic in Korea, and they revive a biennial to respond to that Olympic, like an exhibition that respond to the Olympic, which is entitled the Dictionary of Evil. Of course, we all know that Olympic is supposed to be parang bringing people together, camaraderie and so on. But at the same time, the Olympic was actually along the border of the North and the South Korea. So we thought of creating something that talks about the border and talks about what's happening not only in South Korea and North Korea but all over, and then of course as we go and collect objects, we came up with this work. So it's just basically because we create on site, we collect materials on site that becomes in a way site specific, but at the same time we engage with the people around. We collect objects from them, and I think it's just a response of how we engage with the materials, with the place, and also with the audience.
Yes, actually, when we did the exhibition at Musak in 2022, This is a typical image that you can see in the news in Spain and all year round, like migrants going from Africa from the north of Africa, crossing the Gibraltar Strait to jump the fence to come to Spain. So there are really many dramatic images of these people. Many of them die, and because it's really hard. Many of them have to cross the Algerian desert, and then when they get to Morocco, they have another challenge, which is crossing the sea. So the idea that I proposed to them for the Mosaic exhibition was actually to create something like this, because it reminded me of the small pateras, which is like the inflatable boats that they used to use when they would cross going to Spain. The idea was to make something like this, something small that they did for the Japan Arts Festival, but they created something like this. So from the idea of context-based that migration situation in Spain, which is always a political debate, they transformed it into something with many more layers. This has a colonial reading. This is a galleon. It's filled with many items. It reminds us of the galleon as the ship that used to bring all the materials from Mexico, from New Spain to Spain. So maybe we can talk about all this process of how a site or a place can inspire you to create your works.
Yeah, I think if you look at the year, it was also like, in a way, a response of the 500 years of the Spanish, you know, which is probably still happening up until now. But our work is not only site-specific, but it's also space-specific. So we just respond to the space, how, you start talking about the idea of like proportion and scale. And of course, those little basic things that you need to, address also when you're creating a work. It's just like always a blank canvas in a way. So yeah, so I guess maybe the scale is what the space dictates.
Material, because when we got there, Kristine said, "Is our materials enough?" We said, "What do you have? What does the museum? Can we go in your storage? What do you think you can give us?"
So this is what
So-
they're hiding in their storage. No, I'm just joking.
So anyway, you can talk about it.
Yes, so I showed them all the trash that we had, all the trash that I requested from my colleagues in the museum. I asked them for donations, things that they don't want anymore. And everyone brought many things to the museum. And we went to the dump site, to the recycling centers. And we also got several things there. And to Caritas also. So in the end, we ended up with we filled a room, which is about 200 square meters full of things. And with all those things, it was a very long process, because first we had to clean everything, because we are working in a museum. We don't want to have any insects or anything that might go to the other galleries. We had to clean everything, classify them, and then it was actually very interesting, the work process, because I always thought that they had a previous idea of what they were going to do. But then everything just came along organically. It was like, okay, we have this, the space is the blank canvas, and then we start building from there, building from what we had. So they were improvising from the start. I remember your drawings, your sketches, but then the actual thing, it came along. Yeah, it changes. It came along as the work progressed, as they were discovering many materials. And in this installation, you see many details, because each object is a little sculpture in its own. And I remember you telling us, so these are the little stories of people, and there were typical Tagalog sayings. I don't remember anymore. for some of those little sculptures. So the work is actually multiplied by all those little stories and by all the stories that people who come in and see this work can suggest. Would you like to comment on this work?
My professor, oh, if you cannot make it good, make it big. So I think we just follow that same. No, no, I'm jokingly aside. But I think yeah, we like how do I say,
The
yeah,
challenge
the
all the
challenge
time.
of creating, and also like what the material will dictate, no, how. Well, it's the same thing basically as when you're creating a painting, for example. You know, what materials are you using, or what colors are you. So I guess it's just again, I have a fine arts background, so it's just responding, basically, and having that continuous conversation. And I guess that conversation, I think, uh, is very important, because it becomes like, it tells you what to do, and at the same time,
Actually, the materials, the object dictates what will happen to it. So that's our working process. So we respond to that. Aside that, of course, we're very fortunate that we work with other people, other artists, and our children too, because they're all artists. So we have 5. And yeah.
and also very interestingly working with objects, reading the vocabulary, like putting two objects together, creating some kind of little vignettes. So, and then having that grand work, you start reading vignettes and stories and narratives and creating a whole,
Well, not to mention that when the audience engages on the site, on the work, they would also multiply that layer of narratives coming from their personal experiences as well. So the multiplicity of stories is just, and meaning continues. It goes on and on.
But it's not only that. It's not just like your personal story. It's not just a story about migration. It's a story about colonization. It's a story about sustainability, about how we use our materials. It makes us think of everything that we throw. There are many clothes there. And then when we had the interview with Caritas, that they were recycling about 700 tons of clothing a year that people throw. So it's an eye opener from one topic. It multiplies its meaning into several different layers, and I like the idea of that because it's also a boat which is leaving or arriving. You don't know where it's going. You see the horizon line all around, which is also in the exhibition right now. And the horizon line is a collection of different postcards that you got from the internet from anonymous photographers, right? I remember when we had a workshop with immigrants, with migrants who came to Spain crossing the Gibraltar Sea. And it was very dramatic because many of them were telling us stories about how they went to Spain, spending several days in the boat without having anything to eat or drink. And this is the landscape that they saw. It's an infinite sea. They don't know where they were going to. It's just like a state of indefinition for them.
Yeah, we've been collecting images of horizon all through the years, taken by unidentified, well, someone else, but also undisclosed locations. So it can be in Japan, or it can be in Tawi-Tawi, or it can be anywhere. But weaving them all together, we have the same, looking at the same horizon, I suppose. So it's just
It's the same sea, and in different situations you see cloudy, you see sunrise and sunset.
Right.
Actually, it's arranged from sunrise to sunset, so it signifies the passage of time. about how the world turns.
Yeah, but also they say that the water is actually something that divides us, but actually it's not. It's something that connects everyone.
Maybe we can talk about oh yes, this is also interesting because it reminds us of the previous work, and Jericho's work, The Raft of Medusa, is also a
Yeah.
a post-colonial work, because it was painted by Jericho after an accident in 1816, when the governor of Senegal, no, the French governor who was going to be assigned to Senegal, had an accident, and they were put into lifeboats, but all of the other people, the natives, from Senegal, they were put into a raft that was built by the carpenter of the boat, and then it was too heavy to be carried by the captains that were in the lifeboats, that they had to cut the rope. So the raft is a testimony of what happened to all those other people who drowned. There were records of cannibalism, of murder, and all of that. And you were asked by the Ghent Museum to dialogue with this work. But this was actually a community co-creation work. Is that right?
Yeah, we work with the migrant community in Kent, but yeah, they had this exhibition of Gary Colt, and focusing on the Wrath of Medus. But of course, there's also like other paintings of Gary Colt, and also, as we all know, his paint and his studies, as we all know, his paintings is all about, the common and the everyday also, no? Like someone from, a pulubi, or it's not the usual during that particular period. So Gary Colt also changes, started changing the way we look at things in terms of choosing subject matter. So it's the same thing also when we respond to that. But it's also good to note that the museum is the Museum of Fine Arts, so it's a classical museum. It's not a contemporary museum. So they invite the director invite artists to have a dialogue with contemporary artists, have a dialogue with the current exhibition. Like one example is an exhibition of letters, for example, during the war, no, and they invited Mona Hatoum, for example, or something like that. But anyway, it's
Okay.
been a museum practice.
The boat. The boat has always been a symbol in your work. It's iconic. You've used the boat many times in.
Yeah, we live in how many thousand islands, so I think it's also something that we very familiar. Like I grew up on
Coastal town.
coastal town, but at the same time, I think we always like the form, and but we also make use of the boat, like the inverted boat, as a signifier, because Isabel and I always discuss, maybe it's the dawn of architecture. When a settler started, arrive in an island, the first thing they do is they invert the boat, and it becomes
The first roof.
so we always have this image of an inverted boat, but at the same time, maybe we live in an upside down world, But yeah, so it's always a common image in most of our projects, but at the same time, like cardboard, and it's all those things that we put together.
Yeah, so the inverted boat symbolizes home, and all those other materials become the pillars. So I would like to now deal with the concept of home. What is home for you? I think we've discussed this already before when we were in Leon, and we entitled the exhibition "The Space in Between" for some reason.
Uh, we always say that when you leave home, you don't have a place you call home anymore. You become foreigner, you become a migrant. Like even if we are in Australia, of course we are migrant, but by the time we, every time we go home, come back here, you see things differently. You become some kind of a foreigner. So for us, home, we always say that home is that middle ground, for us. No? And that becomes also
It becomes it's an it becomes an advantage because you see things in doble vista or in dual two vision. So you look at things from the inside, and yet you're looking at it and seeing things from the outside as well. And you appreciate things more. That you don't see them how you used to see things before. Most especially if you left and then you've come back. The more you see when you always come back.
Well, that's exactly how I feel. And but this, for example, this work, it's as you say it, no, home is somewhere you return to. It's also a definition given by the philosopher Homi Bhabha when he talks about home. It's a place where you return to. But here, there can also be many other layers, right? Like the rapid urbanization. And I remember also the photograph of the Bajau settlers. And you did a specific project with the people from the Bajau. So the installation, it's similar to, it reminds us of this settlements of the Bajau. Can you comment on this work? This.
we're always fascinated with like the settlers, no, and how they build their dwellings, and I think that's also like part of our culture where we build organically, and you can see probably how chaotic our Manila is. So
We love it.
and I guess that becomes also like an inspiration for us to start looking into, and also the following the same process of choosing whatever you have and making do of whatever you find, or so.
Yeah, that is also a Filipino trait, right? To be resourceful with, to do whatever you can with what's available.
Always that idea of the recycling, it's always been in the Filipino culture. You always repair. You don't really throw much.
But most of like these projects also, like in this case the Bajau project, we also like did a film of the Bajau doing the rap, no, with their background, like all I think there are 7 videos all around having that same horizon as well. But you have these kids doing the rap music, which talks about the very idea of identity,
Acculturation.
when and acculturation, that when it was actually a commission by the Sherman Contemporary Art Foundation in Sydney, where we have 100,000 Australian dollars, and what is your dream project? So one of the things that actually we remember is these little kids doing the rap music in Davao. But we found out that there are also like the Bajaus. And of course we can relate to the Bajaus because these are nomadic tribes and dislocated, and at the same time, living on the edges of the cities now, because during the 1960s, when they imposed the maritime boundaries, because these are nomadic tribes that they traverse from Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, and the Philippines. But when they impose the maritime boundaries, that inhibits them to go from one place to another, and they started settling on
The edges of the
like
city.
the coral reefs until they got, like for example, introduce dynamite fishing and cyanide and so on. So that kills also their means of living. So they started living on the edge of the cities, and now, as you probably see in Manila, there's a lot of this Bajau begging. So that's how we started discovering these kids, and we thought of like, we started looking into these issues of dislocations and boundaries and so on and so. So there's so many layers that you can look into it. In fact, it also talks about the idea of identity, because they are like no. We know them as the water people, but we are the land people. But when they started living, like, nawawala na yung identity, no?
Yeah, they're losing their identity, and they're losing their way of living because they're forced to live on land when they've always been sea people, seafaring people. They are actually very good divers, and I think now they're forced to really settle on land. So it's also a
Yeah,
case of
there's
losing
I
their
think there's so
culture.
much factors that affects this idea of identity. For example, in this case, migration, in the case of like Hawaii, for example, that changes. We started looking into when we got invited to do the Honolulu Biennial, we started looking into the demographic. We have Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, and so on. So that actually, very intriguing, because it's the sugar cane that changes the whole demographic. So again, another layers of narrative in terms of migration. No? So
Yeah, so in the 1920s, many Filipinos went to Honolulu to work in the sugarcane plantations, and that was the inspiration behind the project for the Honolulu Biennale.
and that started also a new project. So we did a project in Queensland in Australia, and also we started looking into, like, for example, in Bacolod and other countries that produces the sugar cane. So we in our practice we do look into the specificity of a certain place. Okay, like for example in this case the sugar cane, and then it actually opens up into a whole new project. So, like we did the Pina project, for example, looking into the pineapple in Aklan, but actually found out that it talks about the very idea of colonization. It's a colonial. The pineapple is a colonial
colonial
fruit.
fruit.
So, again, it talks about many layers of things. So, yeah, we can talk and talk about all these projects, but I think at the end of the day, it's just responding to the place. It's just basically responding to the materials that we use every day, and it's just responding
To your
to the
situation.
situation.
So now this brings us to your community work. You mentioned this example of the Pina project, and I know from your other projects, for example, like the Pandan, Panday, the Pandays, you're very conscious about all these traditional crafts that we're losing because of the abundance of technology and industrialization. And I think one of the reasons that you're coming back to the Philippines is also to establish those communities. And your works are really based on community co-creation. For example, this one. Perhaps you can comment on this project in The Hague. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Speechless.
Yeah, I think the image says it all. Like it's an exhibition which is called um, it's all about the environment, and as we know, that part of the globe is very conscious about all these things. So we collected all this rubbish and dump it in front of those museums. But of course,
It's on the
the
reflection.
nice thing about this project is we work with people with special needs and respond to the materials in itself, and we float those things, creating this like some kind of a garden in front. Germany Museum is one of the most iconic museum in Netherlands, and they have this reflection pool in front, and I think for us to respond to that space is, it's an opportunity, and Yeah, so
Okay, maybe this is another good example of of that community work that you're mentioning. So this is for the Thailand Biennale in 2018, and you did it with a group of
the
boat
boat makers,
makers.
yeah, they call it the longboat in Krabi in Thailand. And I guess in the end, we have this installation like floating things. But if you look at the community that we work with, I mean, I think for us that's something like living with them, eating with them, learning about things, the way of life, and so on. Like every time they finish a boat, they invite the whole community, and they have this feast, and after the feast, we all push the boats on the water, and I think that's the most beautiful thing. In the end, we come up with works like artworks like this, but these are just
The artworks becomes the sort of a documentation of what had transpired.
coincidental, as we
Yeah.
say.
And what's beautiful about it is the whole process, not the end product, but the whole process, because it's the process that brings people together. I mean, like, it's really an exercise of integrating art into life.
I think it's the sharing and the engagement, and also
And
the
the forging
learning,
of relationships is more than
the forging of
important.
relationship, I
Yes.
suppose.
More than anything else.
Yes, and then being able to use it actually to not just have art as something to see, but something to use, something that's useful for the
Or
community
to be experienced.
to be
I
experienced.
think there's also a need to bring back that ecology of art and life and so on. I think through time, parang nawawala na eh. Diba? So that need to
That art becomes just a commodity.
that it becomes a catalyst.
Your works in the museums, sometimes you make huge installation, well, most of the time you make
Again, basura.
huge installations, and many people come and you hold workshops, like to build their dream houses. In this case, these are airplanes, but you also did it with boats. So can you describe us your experiences working with the museum public in the making of installations like these?
There's always, well, one of the early projects that we did when we migrated to Australia is this project, wherein we asked the migrant community to create their own little airplane in any material. And the idea is not to is to create it on using only string. So basically, it's the idea of
Problem solving.
problem solving and making or thinking with your hands, I suppose. No, and this is like more than 2 years,
2 year and a half
2 year and
workshops.
a half workshops, and it was presented at the Asia Pacific Triennial of in Contemporary Art in 2009.
And what do you think about co-creation, the act of making it with many people? This is something to do with authorship. What is your
Yeah.
take on authorship in art?
I think when you involve people in the
That
process of art
demystify.
making, I think in the process you demystify what art is all about. It's not all just about artists locking themselves inside their studios. Of course, we have different ways of creating, but I think it's important for artists to go out and connect, and because art is a very potent tool
To reflect.
to reflect, to share, to engage, and
Yeah.
and
And also an excuse, right? For example, in this artwork, this is a participatory project.
Is
well, it's an experimentation of how to create art using social media, for example. So we just asked our Facebook friends to steal
bollards.
these objects all over Manila, and they come with these bollards, and I think yeah, it's a fun project. We and then
During the opening.
During the opening, this is what we just talked about, how
They stole
they stole
the
them. You know,
bollard.
we have, for example, art collectors asking their drivers to
Pick it up
steal
now.
from them. So, I mean, in the end, that kind of, you're just creating a social space, I suppose, and that's what art makes. You know, you create social spaces, but at the same time, it talks about boundaries. It talks about properties. It talks about people that, you know, telling people that you cannot actually park here. You know, there's so many, and these are, you know, individual sculptures, I suppose. You know, very individual because.
Everyone can be an artist.
Yeah. One of your last community co-creation projects in Australia was the Aquilizan studio. And you did this in, I don't remember where, in
Art Gallery of New
Sydney,
South Wales,
Art
yeah.
Gallery of New South Wales. So how was this process? How did this come about?
Well, we're always very lucky to work with art institutions, and I think, you know, this is another opportunity for us also to engage not only with the community, but
And
we
in
have,
part, engagement in part.
and in part, but not only with the community, but also work with the institutions. Like we work with the education department to develop learning modules. We work with the installers. We work, so there's so many levels of collaboration. So the collaborative process that we work to, you know, when we work together, extends and expands not only to the community, but also people working in the art institutions in different levels. And I think, again, it's just creating a social space, I suppose.
We have an epilogue to this talk, which talks about your return.
This is our home. Ako, I might cry. This is our home for 18 years. And it was, well, as much as it was excruciating to leave home when we left the Philippines in 2006, along with our 5 kids. But and now we're coming back, but without the kids. So it's more, and the objects that you will see inside that room, it's just a memory of yes,
Of-
and all of our children. The part of them is in there. So
I did not put a slide of the installation because you're going to see it live, but maybe we can describe for the public what they're gonna see. So we have only 3 works in the 3 works by the Aquilizans and 1 from Enrique Marty in the exhibition. At the start of the gallery, we have a self-portrait composed of an Australian wardrobe and the personal belongings of Isabel and Alfredo. We have the horizon line, and we have a major installation titled Nothing to Declare. Nothing to Declare is a
Still
statement.
life.
Nothing to declare, still life, and it's a statement on your part. Please tell us about this work.
I think when you see the project, I think but it's also a bookend. We moved to Australia with our 12 balikbayan boxes, and for 18 years we've been accumulating things, not only, you know, physical objects, but also memories and you know, experiences and so on. And I guess the work that you will see is all about that.
Encapsulates
It
everything.
encapsulates the very idea of that. So, I mean, you know, perhaps we will have a different way of responding to it, but at the same time, it also signifies something else. You know, not only a very personal thing, but it also signifies something else in a bigger issues, like, for example, what's happening now all over the world. And I think yeah, that opportunity to present something like this, yeah, we would like to thank the Ateneo Art Gallery for having us and the opportunity to impart something, and the giving us a space for people to engage
And
and respond.
yeah,
It's like closing the circle because you left and you took your like bayan boxes with you, and now you come back and you bring back with you your artwork in a different format, in a different form.
Yeah.
So it's also an evolution of your work. The public will see it, and it will remind them of your work still, but in a different format because you're still using the same materials, your personal possessions, but at the same time, you're still using the cardboard, which is very symbolic in your work. At the same time, we have the blue pallets, which,
Stealing the beads.
yeah, but some of them already saw it.
but you will see it
You'll
anyway.
see, yes. um, so I think, well, the public can relate. The public will know what state you're in. It's a declaration that you're saying, nothing to declare. Still life, still alive. And it's your comeback exhibition. So it's a special event, and it's a very beautiful way of continuing to do the intertwining of art and life on your part. And perhaps to end, we would like to share a short video.
But we ended up getting 40-footer because there's so much artwork. And just a bit of, we need to give up a lot of art stuff, but still. So it's the family team doing the moving from the house to the port to throwing things in the skip. So we opted because all of the objects are very personal. It's all our stuff. So we opted not to we packed it ourselves.
Arkin, that truck has automatic sensors. Arkin, that truck has automatic sensors when it's counting. Like you press like what with the.
Thank you.
Sorry, before anything else, we would also like to thank the people who have endless and gave us an endless support, unconditional support, like our gallery, Glenn Ames, Yavuz Gallery is here, Sari Ortiga, the Crucible Gallery, and the Red Barn, and Raynor Arts, and sino pa ba, who have all helped us and gave their full support in storing the work, help us carry and all these things. So thank you so much, and also very good family friends who are here to be with us today. Many thanks for being here, and the staff of Ateneo. You're the great. Thank you so much.
Just get So thank you. I have to apologize. I forgot to introduce the two of you, but then everybody knows you. Diba? Parang kailangan pa ba? No. Yes, so thank you for that interesting conversation, and I'm sure we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Um,
Good evening, everyone. Heard the word migrant, migration a lot. And as an expat, it's oftentimes interesting to me how words create these perceptions about choice. I didn't hear OFW, I didn't hear expatriate. So I'm curious if referring to yourself as migrants influences how you present your work versus referring to yourself as an OFW or as an expatriate.
I don't know how we categorize ourselves. Also, like, yeah, it can also be an involuntary migration, I suppose.
Or voluntary migration.
Is it? Or involuntary? Yeah, but yeah, I think it influences the way we present our work, and I suppose so. It's not. We always say it's not. Well, sometimes it's consciously doing these things, but at the same time, sometimes we're just creating, right? And of course, it always reflects your everyday, and I suppose it will always comes out like being a migrant in the work that we create. Like we always use images of or in the form of transport or boxes and so on.
Or you can just do it, well, yeah, of course, we use the word migrant because we are migrant ourselves. So we have always identified, but again, we can identify with the people who leave home, who goes to different, who does the journey. We have all the same journey to tell and a story to talk about. And yeah, there's no difference between.
Yeah,
well,
the thing is
They all-
we didn't use immigrant or emigrant. We just say migrants because immigrant is someone who leaves, emigrant is someone who comes. And for you, it's the same.
I hope we answered your question, Kibo.
Well,
Who was that?
Hello, good afternoon, Sir Ax. No, I really like how the your works are being framed right now. Like, for example, going away and returning. Maybe also in relation to the previous question. Um, do you see any significant changes? Actually, I have a lot of questions, but let's start with that. Do you see any significant changes? I really like how parang it's framed as like coming into full circle, no, from leaving and coming back. And now that you're here, do you see? Well, first, do you see it as like a chapter closing, and you'll be working on different strategies? I'm not saying that you are going to stray away from the idea of migration, but will there be other strategies or significant changes on how you will do your next projects? And also another question is, I'm reminded now when I see your works, every time I see your works, it's always very emotional. No, I see your works as very emotional works. No? Because most of the time when I am reminded with, for example, when I as a child playing, diba, you do these constructions yourselves, and then sometimes my grandmother will tell me na, oh, someone else's trash is another man's treasure. And there's sort of like desire playing in, no? When you are constructing objects. If we are going to relate it, eh, parang dun sa childhood tendency of constructing things out of available materials. Do you see that also in your works, that the constructions that you build is coming out or emanating from a certain kind of desire? Here, what I see is parang the desire to voyage. Eh. Parang there's always that theme, you know? Kasi when you construct, it's either boats, and transport objects or objects for transportation, and I don't know, para monuments sometimes. So there's that desire. And also another question I want to address to Kristine is, how do you see these works dialogue with the previous work of Enrique, which we also saw from the previous exhibition? That's all.
Well, I think first and foremost, probably
Definitely change. I mean, being coming back. We've never left. We always come back and forth. Wait, wala na naman to eh. Hello, ayan. We've never left. I mean, yes, we come back and forth. So we've always been on, kumbaga, on the road, diba? Moving, constantly moving and packing. So we'll definitely, the move here, coming back, will definitely affect what we do. But strategies or, I think it will always be, I mean, who knows? It's exciting for us because whatever we respond to situations. So whatever is available will definitely, our sensibility will always be there, you know. The sensibility of making do with whatever we have, it's gonna be there. So ganon lang yan.
yeah, maybe it's also a new trajectory. No, there's a new trajectory. Like we got locked down here during the pandemic, and I guess this is also one of the reasons why it influenced us to finally decide to move back. And well, one of the projects that we've started here is actually working with these artisans that we've been working with before, and we're lucky that we have a gallery who's very supportive, that helps us come up with like a bit of funds to continue this project, no, rebuilding the workshop of these artisans, and at the same time equipping them with that idea that the skill will be transferred to the next generation, and also to create some kind of a space for the community to come and for them to be empowered, I suppose, and to sustain that kind of craft or practice. And I think this is a new thing that we want to focus on now, and also teach, imparting. I suppose we're educators first and foremost, and I think this is um, um, one of the things that we would like to do when we get settled. No? Yeah, I think we can always say that the pandemic is always transformative, no, and I think in some ways we started looking into new ways of approaching, using art as a tool to do or to impart or to share and to educate, and I think that's the most important thing.
Your question about the whole topic of the part one and part two. Yes, it's well, the title is Project Belonging. I know it's very particular to the Aquilizans, but it's the concept of belonging in itself. They're talking about belonging to a family, to a community, to a society. Enrique speaks about belonging to his particular family, and his works already were all reflecting about his situation in his own family, and he was trying to expose his personal traumas through his work. But the approaches of these two artists, of Enrique and the Aquilizans, are opposing approaches. Because when Enrique tries to expose what is the hidden layers or the hidden traumas in his works, the Aquilizans are the opposite. So that's what I was talking about, the dichotomy between the unheimlich and the Heimlich. When you're seeing the strangeness in the domestic environment, in the case of Enrique, and you are seeing the familiar in things that are foreign to you in the works of the Aquilizans. So it's opposing, are two opposing approaches. At the same time, we are also talking about segregation and accumulation, concealment, and revelation. So they are dialoguing in that sense, that Enrique tries to segregate the snippets in his family in order to understand his own personal situation, while the Aquilizans are accumulating. It's always gathering many objects to try to form a coherent whole and create something out of it. Enrique is revealing the psychological layers behind the troubles in his family, and the Aquilizans are concealing it in this work that you're gonna see right now. So it's those two, they're dialoguing in that sense, in those contrasts that we can see. But the end line is that they're all speaking about family and about identity and about the feeling of belonging.
Hi. Good afternoon. Hi, Freddie and Isabel. Anyway, I just wanted to ask, I don't know if I'm going to phrase it properly, but in some of the readings that we do, there is this question of the idea of being rooted and how identity is being rooted. And it's generally about where you have come from. As someone that has also lived away for a certain number of years, I was curious to understand what was the, though it was explained about the familiar and the foreign, how the foreign became part of your identity. Because like in my case, I can say that, I don't know if it has to do with that I also married someone foreign, but anyway, that that foreign became, for me, part of my identity. And the number of years that I lived away, that being here now, I feel that I am also away from a home that became my home. And Isabel, you talked about how it was excruciating to leave what you considered your home in Australia. So how does that kind of all play out? Is that clear, or was that unclear? Isabel?
Clear.
Okay.
I really don't, I'm not sure how to answer your question, baby. But Freddie and I were, well, we always say that when you leave home, you don't have a place you call home anymore. You will always be in that middle ground. So a series of projects that we did when we left the Philippines, it's called Project Another Country. And that Project Another Country is that space in between. So we were talking about, you come home to the Philippines. It feels like it's home, but yet it's not. It's you feel like you're a foreigner still. Then likewise, when we go back to Australia, 18 years, still not that long. We feel the same thing. The excruciating part and the painful part living Australia is that, when we arrived when we left the Philippines, it was very painful as well, but I was with my 5 children. But now, we left Australia. We come back home. Of course, it's not, I love Alfredo, but it's just the both of us who's back home. Our children are not with us anymore. So I think that part is that, part that it's hard. But, coming back, I don't know, it's a strange feeling as well. Sorry. Well, yeah, I think so. Well, constructing, maybe rebuilding, or I don't know. It's
Yes, it's a blank canvas.
yeah, we have no expectations. Um, we are coming back with a hope that, because when we left, our children it was a conscious decision that when we left, our youngest was sick. So they have already that consciousness. Na somehow we have rooted, like, made sure we left them in the provincia, and they love the provincia, Alfredo's hometown, which is in the north. And I feel so happy to hear them say, if we go back here, they will all say, Nanay, Tatay, I think ang ganda nun, I think I can live here. 'Di ba? It's nice to hear that coming from our children. Of course, my youngest was 6. She's now 24. And, for them to hear, they said, I'd rather live in the provincia than in Manila. That's good. That's promising for me. And then, you have all these things to look forward to. And I hope, but I think we have a strategy so the children will come back with us in the future. Do you have anything to say?
Well, I think as an artist, I think we're we're just lucky to have, art making to process all these things, and I suppose it's also a tool for us to understand, and I guess that's what that's why that's what how beautiful that is, what art is. Um, I guess it can also, like, probably the work that you will see also answers the question that we have a work that is also there's, like, it's also called it's a self portrait, but it is also rooted. Yeah.
Any more questions? Perhaps I'd like to also say that the space that we gave you for this exhibition is relatively small compared to what you have worked in. And we're glad you really made a very distinct work in that area. Yes, I know. Maybe in a few years we can do a bigger project, Alfredo.
We also respond to that gallery, which is it is a print, a drawing, a print and drawing. Yeah. If you look at the work, there's no drawings or a print, but if you look at the work, you start reading the drawings and the prints in another form, I suppose.
Can I share how we originally start discussing? Yep. It actually started with I asked them. I don't think Kristine was still part of the conversation, but it started with I asked them, "Do you have any?" I think you proposed the unrealized projects because they do have a lot of journals, drawings, plans, drawings for projects that they have yet to realize, and I thought that would be a good, concept for an exhibit. But then, as you all know, how they work organically, it changed, and in the past month, I think, or maybe 2 months, that's when the whole idea of the configuration, or more or less, we were able to confirm. And yeah, it's been quite an experience working, especially with Alfredo and Isabel. Um, But yeah, I was surprised yesterday. We finished early. No, the actual installation started, I would say, from Tuesday. No, that was when all the objects were brought over from Laguna. No, after it, the crate, the 40 cubic foot crate, or arrived from Australia. No? So we also had to adjust to their schedule, and I think it figured well. Eventually, we had to configure the calendar, but because the other exhibitions also had to be pushed back, that's why we were able to have their exhibition around this time, which will run until mid-April. So it will be on for quite some time. We hope to hold another artist talk, probably in February, no, in time for Arts Month. Yun. So with that, we would like to thank everyone for coming, for joining us today. Of course, the main focus is their exhibition, but later we do have some cocktail snacks, and then please find time to go around the ground floor galleries. We have an exhibition featuring the collection, which is our tribute to Fernando Sobel for his birth centennial. That will also be around for until next year as well. So, but since you're here, please feel free to go around the galleries. Thank you, and have a good day. Thank you again.